Well, in a positive sign for the federal government's controversial economic forecasts in the budget, the US stock market has soared to a new record overnight because of better than expected inflation numbers. Ross is with me now. Ross, why does inflation in America matter so much to us?
Because it seems, Laura, very much that the American economy and ours are on the same trajectory. It's been the same issues for inflation that have really driven the American prices as they are here. So it's things such as rent, which have been so important, and energy prices. But what you can see from overnight is that the annual rate of inflation through until the end of April is actually down from 3.5% to 3.4%. And during that quarter, the actual quarterly rate has gone down to 0.3%. Now, the important thing also to note here is the things that are actually moving in price. So have a look at food prices on a quarterly basis. They're flat. And that's actually a good thing. But there are also things that are falling in price. So say, for example, gas, used vehicles, the price of used vehicles, which originally was one of the big things that caused inflation. Food prices at home as well, also lower in those inflation reads. So if that were to translate into Australia's economy, then some of those forecasts that Treasury put into our budget, which have been challenged because they're so different from the Reserve Bank's forecast about inflation, if they bear true, then ultimately it will put pressure on the Reserve Bank here to cut rates. And this in many ways would be a vindication not just for Treasury, but also for the Treasurer Jim Chalmers, who has had to defend those forecasts so vigorously.
Yeah, he has. What about the argument, and he was making this argument, well, the RBA hadn't taken into account the budget because it hadn't been delivered yet.
Well, that's a very true point. But the fact of the matter is, as many people have indicated, that by actually targeting areas for relief that are inside the consumer price index basket, such as rental relief and such as those $300 household energy bill rebates, well, those things deliberately will bring down the headline rate of inflation. But what we're seeing here in America is that there is actually some underlying issues that are starting to fall. And that's the reason why there might be some hope for the Australian economy, that maybe prices are abating or price rises are abating, and as a result inflation is starting to moderate back towards that 2 to 3% band, which the Reserve Bank would prefer before it starts to cut rates.
Yeah, it hasn't been there in a decade, but we will see, and Jim Chalmers thinks by the end of the year. So you said the US market hit a record level. Is that going to have an impact here?
Yeah, it will, no doubt about that. So if we have a look at the Dow Jones index from overnight, it did soar off the back of this because, again, it raised the expectation of potentially rate cuts in America. And so if you look right now, you can see getting out there by almost 1% overnight. So that's a pretty solid night for the Dow Jones index. And, of course, we know in recent months, particularly here in Australia, there has been some pressure. Here in Australia today, you can see the response will be probably for the stock market to rise about 50 points on the opening, 2/3% there. So that again will be a pretty solid day after what has been a rocky time here in Australia. And the other one I want to show you is the Aussie dollar. Have a look at this. So the Aussie dollar has bounced, and that's on the expectation that maybe our rates stay higher for longer, but the US rates start to fall earlier. And so this is the reason why the dollar has bounced out in the last little while, since the budget even, when it was sitting below 66.25 US cents, now out towards 67 US cents.
Okay, the government's numbers will be tested again today. The latest unemployment figures coming out. I think the budget said the unemployment rate was going to go up. So
4.5%
today. Yeah,
it's going in the next 8-9 months to 4.5%. Well, today the unemployment numbers will come out, and they are likely to show an increase according to the markets right now. So the unemployment rate currently at 3.8%, and remember last month it actually fell. Well, this month economists are expecting it to rise. These are Bloomberg forecasts, up to 3.9%, with some 23,000 jobs created during that month. That's 11:30 this morning Eastern Time. We'll have it live here on Sky for you. But as I say, really many of the forecasts of this budget already being tested, with the Australian Bureau of Statistics numbers coming out.